Mr. Al, how many McKinney ISD girls basketball teams made the playoffs this season? Well, let's see. 1, 2, 3. Hello and welcome to Sports Talk. I'm Tyler Sloan. Just as sweet as the center of a Tootsie Pop, all 3 McKinney ISD teams in girls basketball made the postseason. We'll have the coaches in studio to preview this week's first-round matchups, as well as reveal the Dennis Baker State Farm Scholar Athlete of the Week. It's playoff time, next on Sports Talk. Girls basketball team had another terrific regular season, 19-10 overall, 6-4 in district play. I'm joined by their head coach, Debbie Harris. And Coach, thanks again for joining us. An improvement on last year's performance for your team, and that's one thing you wanted to do coming into the season. You didn't want to make the playoffs last year and then have any sort of regression. You wanted to move up in the standings, and you did so into third place.
Absolutely. You know, I think getting to the playoffs last year was a big, momentum factor for us, but we definitely wanted to see if we could do a better job.
What was the key in that 10-game district stretch to jump into third in the standings? And for a while, you had a chance to battle Plano out for that second spot.
Well, it's a tough district. I mean, every game is a dogfight, and I think that we do what we do, and we try to do it the best we can. We don't run a lot of sets, and our kids have just bought into our system.
Mariah Mitchell once again had a very fantastic year. She's the Arkansas signee for your team, averaging nearly 21 points per game, which is, I think, third now in the area for 5A players. What allows her, despite the fact that teams are so focused on stopping her, to still be able to put up those points in games?
The thing that makes Mariah the player that she is that she's very unselfish. And she's the most unselfish player that we have. She's the most athletic player that we have. She has the ability to create for herself off the bounce, but she also draws so much attention that she has the ability, she leads our team in assists to give the basketball up. And I think that's what makes Mariah the best player, in my opinion, in our district.
Yeah, and that's something that's very rare for a person that is the leading scorer on the team to also lead in the assist category. Usually it's one player leads in points, another leads in assists because they're not going to shoot that much if they're leading in assists. But Mariah, because she has the ball so much, is able to do best of both worlds.
Yeah, and it's a big help. It really is. And she sees the floor well, and she really cares. She genuinely cares about her teammates. And I think that's a huge part of our success, is that all of our kids care about each other.
Your next 2 leading scorers this year are Jasmine Nelson and Micah Stutz. And they're 2 different players. They play different positions, but they're both effective when they have the basketball.
Jazz is incredibly athletic, and her ability to score has just really come along this year. She's a much different player than she was last year. She's always been a tremendous defensive player for us, but she can shoot the basketball from the perimeter. She can put the basketball on the floor, get to the basket. She's strong. And then Micah is she's just a pure shooter. She's the best shooter that we have on our team, and it's one of those deals with Micah that she doesn't score a lot of points, but when she does, they are crucial points and crucial moments, and she's just one of those kids that you cannot leave open, or she'll bury you.
And she's one that can take the big shot when necessary. Who are some of the other players that have either come off the bench or your other 2 starters that you feel have been really key in bringing your team to the level that it's at right now?
Well, I think the reason that we're in the situation we're in is because all of our kids contribute, and night in and night out. We've got several kids that are role players that complement Jazz and Mariah. Chrissy Fontius obviously handles the basketball for us. She's our point guard. She's a great shooter. I'd like to see her score more, but she's usually got her hands full bringing the basketball down the floor. Leslie Zupanik is another kid that does really well for us. She's very athletic. She really is our big focus on defense. Pulls a lot of rebounds. We've got Brittany Stout, who comes off the bench. Emily Olson comes off the bench, and we've got several kids that do their job, and I think that's led to the success that we've had.
And really, team defensively wise is where you really have your bread and butter. You've held a lot of teams below 50 points this year, which is kind of one of those key marks that you want to try and hold teams under 50 points. That's how you know you're doing a good work defensively. Why is your defense so effective against some of these teams that have talented scorers?
Well, we run a very unconventional type of zone defense, and we do so because Mariah Mitchell, Jasmine Nelson, and Chrissy Fontius play a lot of minutes for us. And if you're going to play that many minutes, it's difficult to play man defense. It's difficult to pressure the basketball baseline to baseline because you get tired. So because we don't sub those 3 out very often, we've kind of had to tweak our defense a little bit and try to, give some people some looks that may be a little bit more athletic than we are, and try to put our body in the passing lane, force some lob passes to give our players an opportunity to, to get from point A to point B. So I think it's effective because not a lot of people see it.
This year, probably your best district win was at home against Plano when you beat them by 10 points, and Plano finished just ahead of you in the standings. What about that game shows you that your team is going to be able to compete in the playoffs with teams that are like Plano?
Well, I think our district has prepared us for teams like Skyline that we're going to meet in playoffs because they're big and they're athletic and they're quick, they're aggressive, they can shoot the basketball, they can rebound. I think that we've had plenty of those teams on our schedule this year, but I think that momentum-wise, that was a big win for us.
Let's talk about Skyline. That's who you play in the first round of the playoffs, as you just mentioned, and you lost them last year in the playoffs, 54-40. But their top 2 scorers in that game were graduated seniors, and so now they return a lot of younger players that have had to step up in their roles. Does that give your team confidence knowing you have a lot of players back from last year's squad to go up against Skyline this time and beat them? I
think so, and we've talked a lot about Skyline, knowing that it was very possible that we'd wind up meeting up with them again at some point. And, they've got, I think they have 1 senior on their roster. They've got, their number 21 is very similar to Mariah Mitchell. But as far as confidence-wise, absolutely. They are tremendously athletic, but they're not the same Dallas Skyline team that they were last year.
I noticed when I was looking at their stats, they're a very good rebounding team. They really crash the boards, and they get a lot of offensive rebounds in games. They use their athleticism in that area. What's the key to blocking some of those players out because they're very physical?
Well, and I think that there's 2 things that we do very well. One is rotate our feet and take charges. And if you can get against a team like Skyline who's going to put the ball on the floor and try to get to the basket, I think that'll play in our favor. Number 2 is blocking out. Our kids know that they're not going to out-athlete Dallas Skyline. There's just no comparison. But they will outsmart them, and blocking out is going to be a big part of that and trying to get some of their players in foul trouble. So I think that those are probably the 2 biggest strengths that we have going into that matchup.
Also, I noticed in last year's contest that Mariah scored 24 of your 40 points, and you just didn't have that contribution from the rest of the team. But so far, the way that you've played this year, I feel like you're going to get that contribution. And who's maybe one player that you feel like could be that key to unlocking the safe to getting that first round victory?
Well, I think there's a few players. I think Chrissy Fontius is going to have to score more for us. We obviously have to get the basketball to Mike as much as we can on the perimeter. And then, Mariah doing what she does, and then obviously Jazz doing what she does. But, all of our players that come in, if they're supposed to be screeners, we need them to screen. If they're supposed to be rebounders, we need them to rebound. If we can get all of our kids just to do those 1 or 2 things that's their job, then I like our chances. I think that we can compete.
If you're able to get by tonight's game, you have Rockville, Lakeview Centennial next. You also have in this region Plano. You could possibly see or Saxe in the future. So definitely there's no easy road in the playoffs. Sir. But what do you think is the potential for this team going forward if you can get on a run?
Well, I think when you get into the playoffs, anything's possible. I've always felt that way. And I think that, everybody that's in our area of the bracket are very similar to the teams that we've played all year long. So, I think that we've got to do our jobs, and if we do, then I think it'll be a fun season.
Well, Coach Harris, thanks so much for joining us.
I appreciate
Good luck tonight in your playoff game against Skyline.
Thank you.
And just to get the time right, as I wrote down here on my schedule.
7:30.
7:30 tonight at Carrollton R.L. Turner High School. That's the site where McKinney is going to look to defeat the team that knocked them out of the playoffs last year, Dallas Skyline.